My next guest really needs no introduction, but I'll do one anyway. He's one of the best and most successful artists in the entertainment industry, a terrific actor, a prolific writer, a brilliant director, and probably the busiest creative artist in all of show business. He's been a dear friend of mine for umpteen years. You may know him from many of his hit shows, but most especially from television's The Love Boat. So, allow me to provide a special welcome to the one and only Ted Lange.
Thank you, sir.
Nice to have you back, my brother.
Yes, it sounds like I wrote that, but hey, I'm happy to hear it.
You did write it.
Yes, I did.
What are you
in my life.
What are you trying to do here? You just got back from North Carolina, where they do this incredible National Black Theater Festival.
Yes, yes.
Tell us about that.
It was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. What they do is they bring in theater plays from all over the country, nationally, and within a week's period, you can go see different plays from either the Midwest, the South, the East, the North, whatever you want, and you get a kind of an overview of what people are thinking about, what writers are writing about, and what the talented actors and directors are that are out there right now prominently doing their work. And I took a play called George Washington's Boy, which is about George Washington had a slave named Billy Lee, and Billy Lee was his favorite slave. And this was all during the American Revolution. Billy Lee dressed Washington every day, combed his hair, sometimes he shaved him, and he was there with him on the battlefield. Now, if you look at the paintings, you don't see much of Billy Lee. So I accidentally made this discovery on this guy, and I started researching it, and I decided to write a play on the relationship between Billy Lee and George Washington, and that's the play that I took to the National Black Theater Festival.
Now, this is real. This is a true story.
This is all based on historical fact. I had to do a
There
lot.
was a Billy Lee.
There was a Billy Lee, and George Washington was the only founding father to free his slaves. Thomas Jefferson did it, the rest of those guys, none of those guys freed their slaves. George Washington freed his slaves, and he freed one slave immediately. Upon his death, Billy Lee was the only slave to be freed immediately. The others had to wait till Martha passed away. So my play is, what was the relationship between George Washington and Billy Lee that Washington felt compelled to give this guy his freedom when nobody else at that time was doing it. Yeah, and so it's a fascinating play, and Robert, I had one of those magic moments in the theater when the play and the cast and the audience all come together as one, and it was absolutely through the roof. It was just, it was magic. It was absolutely magic.
Well, I saw a reading of the play. I guess it's about a year and a half ago,
Yes.
maybe perhaps, and I was blown away. Laurie and I sitting there, you know, and I'm saying, wait a minute, is he serious? And it was really, and it was beautiful. It was just a reading.
Yes, thank you.
Now you've staged this.
Yeah, I developed it. I had to do some more. From that reading, I did some cuts and some additions, did some more research. I went to the areas. I went to Philadelphia. I went to New York, which was the first capital. I went to Mount Vernon. I went to not Harper's Ferry, that's another play I'm talking about. I went to McConkey's Ferry, where where Washington crossed the Delaware. So I did all of this research to back up my thesis of the play, so that historically when I did it, I could say, yes, this is the deal. Now, interestingly enough, in North Carolina at the theater festival, there was a connection because the audience was 95% black. And this is one of the things I learned is I think there has to be, white newspapers have to bring in some black critics, because sometimes the white critics don't get it. Right. And so I'm there, it's intermission, and we have this critic from North Carolina, and he's coming up to me saying, well, wait a minute, I don't know if this is true. You're saying this and this and this and that, and, you know, I don't know. Now, I know that's a white thing. Right. Because when you start laying out some facts that's buried in history, they take exception to it. But what I did was, from my years of training being in integrated theater, I printed the bibliography in the program. Okay. So that when the critics said, well, you know, I don't know if that's true. I said, well, I didn't write that. Right. I researched that, and that's, open your program. See this page here? I got that information from this book. Now, you're going to have to argue with that white man. I just put in the element and put it into a theatrical and a dramatic sense, but that's where I got the information. So don't be mad at me. Be mad at Joseph Ellis, because he's the one that told me that. So that's what I had to do. Is I went through about 57 books, almost 60 books, just researching the material on Billy Lee. There were some other slaves, Oni Judge, and a cook they had named Hercules. And then I had to figure out a way to dramatically put it in a structure in order to tell the story. Yeah.
So now the North Carolina, this festival takes place in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, every 2 years.
Yes.
And unfortunately, we just lost the guy who...
Larry Leon Hamlin passed away, and actually everything was dedicated to him, and that's what I did with the play, because he was the impetus and the driving force that really put the National Black Theater Festival together and on the map. So, I mean, a lot of people were really grateful and thankful for Larry's contribution to black theater.
So you did how many performances? Just
We
one?
did 4 performances, because what they do is they bring in another show, and they do performances, and they bring in another show. So they had about maybe 20 theaters, and each out of the 20 theaters, you've got 2 plays going on.
Amazing.
You know, and there's a big rotation schedule and everything else. And
They also do seminars and stuff at night after the plays are over that run into 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning.
And they do readings there at the festival of new plays and new works. Garland Thompson with the Frank Silvera Writers Workshop, he's there. And so if an actor comes in, a black actor comes in, and they want to be a part of the festival, they can sign up and do readings. It's really a wonderful environment.
I remember, I've been there, and I know what you mean. The hotel lobby, you can't even get through the hotel lobby. It's just always jam-packed with people, a lot of people that we knew, a lot of people that
we haven't seen in years.
And they pick actors out and say, oh, we got a reading tonight. Who wants it? And then, like you said, they sign up and you go read. So tell us more about the reception for George Washington's Boy, which is the title for the play.
Yeah, George Washington's Boy. What was really wonderful for me is they had regional theater scouts there. So they saw the play, and you know, like, I have enthusiasm for what I do. I mean, I really love what I do, but sometimes people go, yeah, Ted, sure. But they came and saw the play, and then what happened was I got some offers from some regional theaters and also from some universities, because it's also educational in a way. So I got the University of Florida and Vanderbilt University in Tennessee all interested in doing productions of the play, which is, that's the other thing is, if you are an artistic director, you could come into the National Black Theater Festival and kind of get an overview of what you might want for your own season.
Right.
And that's part of the reason for doing what we do.
It's a great, great concept that Larry Leon has put together. I want to talk a little bit about, well, not a little bit, you touched on this new play that you're working on. And it's about Harper's Ferry, and it's about John Brown. And I'd like for you to kind of set that up for us, because you've already told us about George Washington's Boy, and you know, a lot of schools, a lot of people will not want to tell these stories. And the people that, like you said, they bring, you know,
Well, George Washington had a black child. Now, they don't want to acknowledge that George Washington had a black child. The child's name is West Ford. And I ask people to go Google that name, West Ford. W-E-S-T, Ford. That was George Washington's black child. Now, I'll put that in the play. People go, where'd you get your... It's there. Yeah, right. It's there. When I was researching George Washington, I went and saw the picture of him crossing the Delaware. And I went up in New York. I was in New York at Metropolitan Museum, and I'm seeing this thing. And so I'm walking around after I finished looking at it. That's part of my research thing. I see this picture of a white man coming out of a building. His arms are bound, and he leans over and he's kissing a slave woman's baby. She's holding a baby up. And I said, well, who's this guy? So I find out this is a painting of John Brown on his way to be executed. The painting was a very striking painting. So that sent me, and I usually write urban plays. My plays are about.
I know, I've seen all of them, and they are, yeah.
You know, they're comedies but now I've gotten on this history kick. So I said, well, let me just, it's like the universe or God or whatever put something in your path for you to investigate, and then it's your obligation to me as an artist to then investigate it. So I started looking at John Brown, and I found out there were 5 black guys with John Brown.
At Harper's Ferry.
At Harper's Ferry. 2 of them died. 2 of them were captured with John Brown and were hung. 1 guy got away. Black guy. The only guy that was in the fray that got away was a black guy named Osborne P. Anderson. That's my play right there. Osborne P. Who was this guy? And what I've done is, again, I went in and started doing research, and I started finding out all of these facts that they don't tell you about John Brown. Now, there's a movie called Santa Fe Trail, which is a movie with Errol Flynn, Olivia de Havilland, and Raymond Massey. Raymond Massey plays John Brown.
Right.
It is a travesty, historically, to the memory of John, because the bad guys are the abolitionists. Bad guys are the guys that want to free the slaves, if you can imagine. Warner Brothers, 1937. You go, whoa, because that's part of my...
Google that.
Google that one. Look at that movie. I'm going, wait a minute. We don't want to free the Negroes? Whoa, what is that going on here? And then there's another movie called 7 Angry Men that Raymond Massey did later on with James Edwards.
Ooh, okay.
James
Yes,
Edwards
of
is
course.
in this movie, and it is a little more accurate than the previous movie. But again, there are things that are done that are not in there. My pleasure in this is that of the things that have been done so far that I've researched, mine is much more accurate, and particularly in that you're going to have the point of view. None of these guys are going to give the black point of view on what happened. How does a black man feel about, going into Harper's Ferry? I went to Harper's Ferry, found some books that nobody knows about. I found some books, and there was a preservation society in Harper's Ferry that wrote a book that just talks about the involvement of the blacks in it.
Oh, really?
Talks about, because if you read the history books, they say, well, none of the slaves rose up against, none of them went for their freedom when John Brown went into Harper's Ferry. Not true.
Not true.
And this book documented who did it and all of that. And it's like, a conspiracy. Like, if you believe or do not believe that John F. Kennedy was murdered by one guy, Lee Harvey Oswald. Yeah. Well, some people say it's a conspiracy. Well, if you take another historical event, such as Harper's Ferry, there are certain things that happen that you got to question.
Right.
Well, wait a minute. What went on here? There was, in the history books, you'll see there's a slave named Ben. Ben picked up a gun and was shooting white folks for his freedom. Okay? Now, if you read the history books, Ben was captured along with the other guys, right? He had a wound. He had a minor wound. They put him in a thing, and Ben died of fright.
Ha! Oops, excuse me. That's too loud.
Ben died of fright. Now, he wasn't afraid to pick up no gun, but when they captured him, he died of fright. So I put in my play, I put in a thing about Ben and the fact that they have to rewrite history. Yeah. So they can't say that Ben, who was this Virginia slave who shot at his master and who was captured, they can't say that, well, the Virginia militia killed him. Yeah. Because they were dealing with the remnants of what was going to later become the Civil War, and so they're trying to put a kibosh on that. And so, but
I like kibosh.
Yeah, they try to put the kibosh on Ben. Well, that's the way the whole book is. And then I implemented that into my play. There were characters as a Lewis Washington, who was the great-grandnephew of George Washington, was captured and was held as a hostage. And he had a slave named Jim, who was helping to defend the fort at Harper's Ferry. Now, what the history books will tell you that the Negroes didn't pick up a gun. They didn't do that.
They were scared.
They were scared and they were cowering in the corner.
And their eyes were big.
Real big, like, Master, no, why are you going to free me? You know, that don't even make no sense. Yeah,
Please don't free me, Master. What I'm going to do?
Yeah. So that's what my play is about. My play is and it's all written down. My play is a historic point of view, hopefully dramatic, about what went on at Harper's Ferry, what led up to it, and then the aftermath. That's my play.
And all from that painting.
All that, the impetus was seeing that painting and being curious. And I'm very fortunate that when something grabs hold of me, that's it. I don't stop until it's come out. It just doesn't let go of me. I mean, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'm writing scenes. I slide right out of my bed and I write scenes because what I find is it's truer than if I try to remember it the next morning. Yeah. So, and what happens is my subconscious, like I'll go to sleep, I said, something's not right about that scene, and I'll go to sleep. And then the answer to that scene will come in the middle of the night, and so that's when I got to write it. So now I've trained myself to just slide on out of that bed, turn on the light, and write the scene, whatever it is, or write the speech, or do the edit, or do the cut, whatever it is that has to be done. Because then I know it's going to be at its truest moment because it's fresh in my mind.
Did you always do that as a writer? I mean, when did you start writing?
You know, Bobby, I was in New York. Well, first I talked to you when I was a kid. I went to NEC, talked to you, and I was doing Shakespeare. I was going to be a Shakespearean actor. And I remember saying, meeting you and saying, I want to join the NEC, but I got, and I'm supposed to go to the Colorado Shakespeare Fair. You said, no, go to the Colorado Shakespeare Fair, do that, then come back, and then, you can join us. So I went, and that spurred me on. So my whole deal was, at the time, was to be a Shakespearean actor and to make my living that way and do classical plays. And when I got actually into the business, I found that I was on Broadway and I was doing Ain't Supposed to Die a Natural Death with Arthur French and a whole bunch of other New York actors. And it wasn't happening fast enough for me. So I started writing. And that was back in the 70s. That was like 71. I started writing because it just wasn't happening fast enough. And I had this play called A Foul Movement, which opens with a guy sitting on the John. And he's sitting there contemplating the world, and the thing ain't going right. It was kind of like where I was in my life. Yeah, the world was not going right because I wanted to be in show business, and this just wasn't that. People didn't recognize I was talented, and that was pissing me off. So I wrote this play, and I gave it to a guy named Roger Robinson. And Roger Robinson said, because they were doing a playwriting thing at the NEC.
He was a wonderful actor.
Wonderful actor, and he was the head of this playwriting thing. And he read my play, and he came back to me and he said, Ted, I read your play, and this is the biggest crock of crap that I have ever read in my life. I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, you got a cockroach talking to people, and you got... You open it up with him sitting on a toilet, and then he falls in love with a girl named Rose, who turns out to be a plant from another plant. No Negroes want to see that. What's wrong with you, man? I said, well, I just thought it was, no, we're not, just forget about it. Take it away. You're out of here. So I take the play, I stick it in my jacket. I'll never forget this, and I'm getting on the subway because I understudied, Roger and I both understudied some actors in Ain't Supposed to Die a Natural Death, and one of the actors that I understudied was a guy named Sati Jamal. Sati gets on the subway and he goes, hey man, what's that? I said, oh, this is a mistake. I thought it was a play, but it turns out it's a mistake. So, a play, let me read. I said, oh no, you don't want to read this, because Roger had beaten the crap out of me just, in my mind. I just said, man, what was I thinking? So Sati said, look, let me just read it. He had nothing to lose. Well, that's true. Let me read it. Okay, just don't be as cruel and as mean as this guy. So I give this play to Sati. Come back the next day, Sati says, hey, Ted, that is the best play I ever read. I said, what? He says, really? He says, I'm at NYU, and I have to do my master's thesis, and I want to do your play as my master's thesis. I want to direct your play. I said, you like the part about the cockroach? He goes, yeah. I said, and the girl that's named Rose is really a plant? That doesn't bother you? No, that's really him. Blah, blah, blah. And that was my life lesson.
It's good you didn't throw it under the train.
Oh man, well I was 2 minutes from doing that. But that's a life lesson that you have to really have your point of view and your vision. Because I felt that in when I was doing, that's why I printed the bibliography for George Washington. My vision is not going to be the same as some guy that's never been exposed to the material. And my audience, and this is what I said to the critic. The guy says, well, I don't know if I believe this or go for this. I said, you're not my audience. I said, look around you. All of these people here love this play. They connected to the play. I said, I have nothing against you. You're here on a pass.
Right.
You know, I mean, you're lucky we let you in here to see this. But this isn't for you. This is to let black people know that George Washington had a son. This is to let black people know that Only Judge was Martha's favorite slave and she ran away to New Hampshire. This is to let black people know that Hercules, who was George Washington's cook, ran away in Philadelphia. This is for us because our history is being hidden from us. And what I was pleased about was that it worked as a play. And that was my 20th play. This Harper's Ferry play is my 21st play. And what I'm happy to report is I think I understand now how to communicate through playwriting what I have to say.
Right.
I'm not a novelist. I can't do nonfiction. I don't know how to, but I know how to give an actor a speech on the stage. Right. And as a director, I know how to get him emotionally to mine the speech. You know, that's what my forte is. Right. So I think that you're given gifts, and your obligation to God and the universe is to then work with your gift and develop it. And because I came in the show business, my only thing was to be an actor. I had no other aspirations for anything else. Right. And I'll be damned if show business said, so what? And show business said, well, we don't care if you're an actor. I said, well, then I'm going to write a play. Right. And then, okay, I'm going to direct that play because nobody else wants to direct my, you know. Right. And then I learned through the course of things, I know how to write a screenplay. I know how to write a joke in a comedy. I mean, I know how to do these things. And it's been trial and error, but I think I've grown as an artist, and that's my delight as a performer and as a patron of the art.
What do you tell the young playwright? What do you tell the youngster who wants to be a playwright, but is not quite sure that he how to do it? I mean, what can you tell these young kids? I'm talking about the young kids who are watching you. What do you tell them?
There are 5 things, I think 5 qualities you must have. The first thing you have to do, if you want to be a playwright, is you have to say, I'm a playwright. Now, when you're sitting around a whole bunch of black folks and you say, I'm a playwright, the first thing they're going to say is, what have you written? Okay, now you got an obligation to write something. But the first thing you got to do is say, that's what I am. I am a playwright. And once you say that, you either become that or you get off the stage. Right. So if you're a playwright, say you're a playwright. Walk around, tell everybody. And then they're going to say, well, let me see something you've written. Then once you write something, you are a playwright. Now, you could be a good playwright, a bad playwright, a learning playwright, or whatever that is, but you're now walking in those shoes. Second thing I think you have to do is you have to be lucky. Now, how do you get lucky? You have to put yourself in a situation where luck can come to you. And if you're a writer, you have to join a writing group, because what happens is you find out about vehicles that that some actor needs a monologue, or they're doing a play over at this theater. You should submit your play. And that's how you get your luck. It's networking in a sense, but you have to be lucky. The third quality I think you have to have is a mentor. Someone that knows something about what you want to do, whether it's acting, directing, or playwriting. Right. I feel that it's never too late to learn. Edward Albee, who was one of America's foremost playwrights, before I went to the National Black Theater Festival this summer, they had a conference, a playwriting conference in Omaha, Nebraska. Okay, so I bought me a ticket. I went to Omaha, Nebraska, and I sat up there with Edward Albee, Romulus Linney, Arthur Coppett. I sat up with all of these playwrights, and they're saying, well, when you write a play, it's got to have this, it's got to have that. And I go, It's very good, all right. I didn't know that one. And then you got to have this and that. Oh, well, I knew that. That stuff I knew. Man, then you got to, oh, that's another. Yeah. So you got to put yourself around someone. I remember when August Wilson became prominent, he gave a couple of conferences too, and I would go to those just to sit and see what August was about and to see what his process was and how he did what he did. I think it's really, really important. Now, August doesn't know that he was my mentor. He didn't, but in a sense, I read or went and saw every play that he did because there's something to be gained from that experience. And then I would sit and talk to him. And sometimes he didn't really want to talk to me. I was from television. You know, August didn't have time for somebody from television. But I get up in his face and say, hey, man, when you did Ma Rainey, what was you thinking about? Okay. Well, Ted, it was about. You know, that's what you got to do because if you're passionate about your art. The other thing that I think you have to have is you have to have a good idea. You gotta have a good idea. You'll find that sometimes you may do something, and somebody might co-opt your idea. But if that's your only idea, if you only have one idea, don't be a playwright. Don't be a screenwriter. Do something because somewhere along the line, you're going to see someone's going to take some of what you've done, and you're going to be a little bit upset. But as you go along within the structure of the game, you start to learn how to protect yourself. And I think that's real important. That my one good idea of George Washington led to what I felt was another good idea, which was Harper's Ferry and John Brown.
And I'm going to now get to that because I want to know at what stage is the play.
Here's what I do, Robert. As I write a play, and I think that I've written it the best that it can be written, and then I call up actors that I know. I say, man, I have a really good part for you, and I'm going to be reading it at my house. Well, Ted, I don't know. I said, I'm going to feed you. I'm going to give you some wine, spaghetti. It's going to be fun. We're going to sit around. We're going to talk about it.
All right. Look at me like that.
Yeah. Come on. So I send them the play, and they go, hey, man, this is pretty good. So this is what I always get. Hey, this is pretty good. I say, well, thank you. Go on. So I get everybody over to my house. We read the play. After we read the play, I tape record the comments. I give everybody wine or something to relax them, whether it's, whatever you like to drink. We sit around and people say, and here's the great thing about actors. This is absolutely wonderful about actors. An actor can tell you how they feel about your play just from the point of view of their character.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, they don't know nothing about structure. They just know, I should be kissing the heroine over there because the other guy got the kiss. And he said, well, that's not a good idea. But then I think that he should go and rob the bank. Oh, that's a good idea. Right. You don't know. You know what I mean?
Right. Sure.
But actors have this wonderful ability to give you the criticism that you need without any of the stuff of what a writer might give you. And that's what I like about it. So I have a reading in my house. Now, after I do that, I then do a rewrite, taking the stuff that I think helps the play. Sure. If it helps the play, I put it in. If it doesn't help the play, I don't do it. And sometimes people have wonderful suggestions, but it doesn't help the play. Right. And my main thing is, how do I make the play a better play? Right. Then after I do that, I do a rewrite, in particular with John Brown. I then went to Harper's Ferry, got some more information, did another rewrite. And now where I am now is my next step is to do another reading with those actors or with other actors. Like I might have felt that one actor didn't do as well as I thought they might. Change that actor, put in another one. And now what I'm going to do is rent a theater for one night, invite an audience, and we'll do the reading in front of a non-paying audience that has no obligation to me or anybody else just coming to see the play. And then what I do is listen to see how the play works, and if it's working or not working, or whatever it's doing, and then I'll do another rewrite based on that.
So that's basically where you are. You're about to do another reading
with an audience.
With an audience, right?
In a theater a staged reading, because then when I do,
Which is what I saw when I
Yes.
saw
You saw
George Washington's
with the
Boy.
stage reading. That's
Right.
exactly right.
Right.
And so what I'll do is, like, the other thing is I found that the original title was Echoes from Harper's Ferry. That was the original title. Then I realized in the writing of it that Osborne P. Anderson escaped. Nobody knows who this guy is. And what I did is I used a device of Anderson, because he worked at a printing shop in Canada. I made him he liked to have journals. Mm-hmm. So, and at the in 1861, he published a book on Harper's Ferry, on what had happened, because he said he was the only one on the inside that knew. Oh, wow. And because the South came up and said, this is what it was about, in the North did this, Henry David Thoreau, all these guys, all these white guys came in and said, well, this is, you know. Mm-hmm. And the only one that really had information was Osborne.
The black guy.
The black guy. So I call it the Journals. The play is now called The Journals of Osborne P. Anderson.
Oh, okay.
So what happens now is, if you're black and you didn't know, you know who John Brown is, but you don't know. Now in the title, right, you've gotten educated that there's somebody black that was there. You know, but that came out of...
That's a great move.
Yeah. I think it's a good
I mean, the other title was fine, but this says so much more.
Yeah.
And it just makes the whole picture so much better with that name.
Yeah. And what I've done is I've used a device of a writer throughout the play.
Right, exactly.
You know, because he's recording a journal.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what the things pop up and lay their pearls at your feet. Mm-hmm. You know, and then as a writer, you string them together to make the most beautiful necklace you can make.
Well, what an incredible story! I can't wait to come to the reading.
Yeah, I think you're gonna.
Don't call me for one of the roles, because I know you look very strange. But I will come to the reading.
You know, because Frederick Douglass was involved with this.
I know.
Frederick Douglass was involved with it. So
what are you saying?
Yeah, you know, well, Robert.
Anyway, so now this has been great, my friend. This has been great. I wanted you to bring us up to date on the things that you were doing. I wanted you to touch on the festival, because it's really fantastic. But
you know, I'll tell you this. I just directed a feature film.
Oh, wow.
In Omaha, Nebraska.
I told you this guy is amazing.
Well, this is well. You know, the thing is, I just want to have a job. And sometimes people don't want to give you a job. They go, "Oh yeah, you're that guy. I'm not giving you a job." You know. So I learned when I played baseball, if I had the bat, I got to play. You know, if I had a bat and a ball, you know, everybody had to come to my house. Right. You know, so what I did was, 3 years ago, I did a play called Four Queens, No Trumpet.
Love that piece. Love it. It's got to be a movie.
Someday. I hope it will be. So I did this play, and this young kid comes up to me. He'd seen the play. He said, "Mr. Lange, I really like your play, and I like your direction, and I wrote a movie. Would you direct my movie?" And I said, "Well, let me read the script." He says, "Okay." I give him my address. He sends me the script. I'm back in L.A. I read the script. It's pretty good. There's some problems, but the spine of the story, and this is what I learned from playwriting, the spine of the story is really good. So I called the guy up in Omaha. I said, "I like your script." He said, "Will you direct it?" I said, "Yes, I'll direct it." He says, "Okay, I'll go raise the money." Now, it took this kid 3 years to raise the money.
Wow.
Okay? So he calls me up just before I go to, I was doing one of my plays in Denver at a theater called the Shadow Theater. Just before I'm to go, he says, and I had worked it out so that I can do the play. I would do the movie, then do the play. Okay? And he calls me up and he says, "Mr. Lange." And I am of the opinion that everybody can always tell when they got a job and when they lose a job just by the other person's voice on the other end. And the guy said, "I got a problem." I said, "Yeah, I know." I said, "What is it?" He said, "I don't have the money." I said, "What do you mean? You told me all these months we got the thing from the DGA, you become a signatory, we worked out the thing with SAG for the actors. What do you mean you don't have the money? You told me you had the money." He says, "Well, the guy that was going to give me the money is getting a divorce. And his wife has put a thing on all the money." I said, "You mean all that time you were telling me you had the money, you didn't have it in the bank in escrow?" Right. He goes, bank, escrow? See, you never told me that. I go, yeah, I never told the guy that. Right. So he says, but don't worry, I got a line on some other people that didn't get some money. I said, well, listen, don't call me
till you get the money.
You got my hopes up, man. I was going to go do this feature. So the guy calls me back 3 weeks later. He says, I got the money. Mr. Lange, I got the money. I said, is it in the bank? He goes, no, but the guy probably said, hey, don't call me till the money is in the bank. Boom. Calls me back 2 weeks later. He says, the guy with the money wants to talk to you. I talked to the guy with the money. He says, you like this movie? I said, I don't like that movie. I love that movie. He says, you think it's a good movie? I don't think it's a good movie. I think it's a great movie. Right. He says, well, I'm going to finance this. I'm going to finance this movie. I said, did you put the money in the bank? No. I said, don't call me. Don't talk to me until you got the money in the bank. Bang. So they called me up, and it was when I was on my way to Denver. Right. And so I said, well, we can work this because there's a theater conference with Edward Albee in Omaha. I said, I have to be at that theater conference. I said, but after that, I'll be in Omaha. So, A, it won't cost you any money to fly me out. Right. Okay? And then what I did was, because it's black theater, I told a guy in Denver at the Shadow Theater, I said, look, I know it costs a lot more for you to fly me back to L.A. than fly me to Omaha. So that didn't cost him no money. Right. So, I mean, that's the kind of, this is the stuff I learned in trying to, because we got to all work together in black theater, whatever way we can. So, the guy from Denver flies me into Omaha. Right. I get to meet Edward Albee and Arthur Coppett and all those guys. Then after that's done, I walked into this theater conference, and the guy that's financing the movie, the guy that wrote it is also in it. And he says, I said, I'm getting ready to go see Edward Albee talk. Right. He says, well, wait, first you got to look at this actress, because we haven't cast this part. And what they did was they had, like the National Black Theater Festival, they would put on plays. Okay. And there was a white actress there that was absolutely wonderful. I looked at her, I said, she's got the part. Now let me go see her.
Let me go see Edward Albee.
Let me go see Edward Albee. And that's what we did. And the great thing about this is, unlike Hollywood where you have suits over you, right, saying, well, you know, we want another close-up, or why isn't there a two-shot here? There's none of that. It was what myself and the writer and the director, the actor, right, what we did together, and we had to get everybody on the same page. And so, you know, I had a cinematographer that was reluctant. And so he says, well, I don't know if this is going to work. I said, well, let's go to lunch. So I took him out to lunch, sat up, and here's my old standby, a glass of red wine. Red wine. So I bought this guy lunch, and I said, you like wine? He goes, yeah, I like a red wine. Get this guy. So by the time I was finished, he was pumped. I said, how many features get done in Omaha? He said, well, Alexander Payne. I said, besides Payne, did you work on Alexander Payne's movie? No. So, well, you're working on my movie. Right. Let's make a movie. We're making a feature film in Omaha. Right. What are you waiting on, man? Because he was shooting commercials. Right. So how many more commercials you going to do after this? You know what that is. Right. Let's make a feature.
Make a feature.
He's like this. Yeah. And we got everybody, and I got what we did is, it was like being a cheerleader. You got everybody, white, black, whatever your thing was, get on the same page. And I'll give you an example. We were in Omaha. I have to do this scene. And the scene is the wife breaks down, and she has a nervous breakdown. And they had an ambulance, but they didn't have a cop car. And they needed a cop car. Now, this is what I learned doing theater. Whenever you don't have something, bring everybody into the room, sit them down, say, I don't have this.
Right. Right.
Anybody know how to get this? So what I did was, we were on a set, we had the ambulance, but we needed a cop car. So I brought everybody in. I says, hey, the production people forgot to get a cop car. Right. We don't have a cop car. We need a cop car. So there was a crew guy. This is a crew guy. This is a guy, a gaffer. Right. He says, well, you know, I got a cop car at home. It's a stripped down, but it's a black and white. I said, Somebody take him home, get that cop car. And then another lady said, well, you know, I'm dating this guy with the sheriff's department. And he works at the sheriff's department, and maybe I can get a sheriff's car for you. Right. Give her a cell phone. So she got on a cell phone. Other guy went. And what we have two cars. We have a sheriff's department car, and then we have a black and white. And what happened is he had those metallic lettering. So we have P-O-L-I. We don't have any C. So I framed it. So I framed the picture. So you see the front part, you see the P-O-L on the police car, and then you see the sheriff. Man, it was fun. Right. You know, it's trying to, how do we make this work? Because this is a good idea. This is a good movie. We can do this, you know? Right. And that's it. So that was it. It's called For Love of Amy. If you want to see it, you go on. He's on the web, www.forloveofamy.com. That's my movie.
Right on.
Okay, so please take a look.
Take a look at the movie, and Ted Lange directed it, and we'll be looking at it. We'll also be waiting for all of the other wonderful things that you do.
The journals.
The journals.
Of Osborne P. Anderson. Harper's Ferry.
Hey, listen, needless to say, it's always fun to talk with you, have you sit at the round table, because all I do is listen. And it's great. It's wonderful. And not only that, the people that are watching this show are watching you. You are so inspirational in what you say and how you say it. It's amazing. And I'm older than you, and I'm inspired.
Well, you inspired me. You inspired me early on in my career, and I didn't even know that I could have a career. But I know that seeing the NEC as a young man gave me hope. Well, and so thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being my friend for all these years, and thank you for being one hell of an artist, the busiest man in show business, Ted Lange. Thank you, Ted. Sir.